limiting what I'm actually doing and only doing the things that make the biggest impact in the company. So I have multiple companies now, and I focus on three things. I focus on the vision. Where's this company headed? Why are we headed in that direction? What is the impact we're going to make? What's the mission of this company? Where's this company going? How can I get everyone excited about that? Number two is I find the people that are aligned with and able to have the ability to get to the result that I'm looking for, that vision that I'm looking for. And then number three, how can I provide those people the resources in order to move toward that vision? Now, the vision may change as the company grows and expands and whatever, but the point is that I focus on those three things and only those three things: the vision, the people, and then the resources in order to get them what they need.
With me today, I have Dr. Greg Pursley here, who recent contacts. It's really cool when you meet a marketer through marketing, right? I discovered him on Instagram. He was running an ad. I thought it was really interesting. I decided to reach out to him. And what I've learned is Dr. G is really approachable, tons of information to share here. So Dr. G, welcome to the show, man. How are you?
Hey, I'm doing great. Thanks, Patric, for having me. I really appreciate you having me here.
I'm excited because you like our past guest, we weren't diving into the mental game like we are going to today, because Dr. G, you're the author of Fix Your BS. And I'd love to first, before we dive into Fix Your BS, let's get a little bit of history of how you got to where you are today and what that story was like.
Yeah, it's an interesting story, actually. So everybody should get something new out of this background. I know sometimes it's not fun to listen to people's background, but this is an interesting one. So I graduated as a chiropractor at 23 years old. My wife and I have had a 1-year-old daughter at the time. A couple of years into starting my own practice, we were doing pretty well, and we had our second child, our son. Our son was born with dwarfism, which is a random genetic change. We had no idea. It's 1 in 50,000 births. And so that kind of threw us in a new direction. And he ended up having a lot of medical complications. And those medical complications had a lot to do with his lungs, and he ended up having a trach and a vent put in his first year. And he had that trach and vent for 8 years. Now, the reason why I'm telling you that is because anybody that's going through financial restraint, mental restraint or anguish, physical, mental, emotional, any of those pains that you're feeling, I've been there, I can tell you. And so for 8 years, we basically were focused on keeping him alive, keeping the family together, and surviving. And during that time, I really had to deal a lot with my own mental side of dealing with this unexpected directional change in my life that I had not planned on. I was one of those guys, I was going to be a multimillionaire by 30. Well, when you're focused on keeping a kid alive and you're focused on keeping your family together, you're not focused on let's grow a business properly. So anyway, 15 years into my business, my son was doing better, and I was able to refocus. And I realized that I was not going to be able to retire or do the things I wanted to do and live the life I wanted to live the way I was doing what I was doing. I basically owned a job. I was a chiropractor. I treated people. I would get paid for that, and that was it. And we had a lot of medical bills from our son's stuff, and we had a lot of stuff. So I came to a point that I was like, this is not going to work. It's unacceptable for me and my family. I'm not happy. I'm going to have to move into a new direction. And in doing that, we took my chiropractic practice, turned it into an integrated medical company called PC Medical Centers, started expanding, turned it into a seven-figure per year enterprise. And in doing that, I realized how to run a business and that there are a lot of people dealing with the same stuff, that they are stuck, and most of it's mental. So I wrote the book, Fix Your BS, Fix Your Belief Systems, to talk about that process of my own mindset and what I had to do in order to be okay with the outcomes of taking the risk of moving in a new direction, in the middle of my life. And so that's what it's really all about. We started putting information out there online, and people started asking about, hey, can you help me? Can you consult me? And so now we have a consulting process where we work with people, on the basic, group setting, but we also work with people one-on-one in the elite group setting. So I'm happy to talk about any and all of that. I know it's a lot to unpack, but that's kind of the basic overview of where I was to where I am now.
I love it when people share the stories and share the stories of, hey, this is what we had to overcome. Sometimes you hear people and it's like, man, they just went from one easy thing and this person's just gifted and they didn't have any struggles. But to kind of have somebody that is vulnerable and sharing like, hey, we had this plan and then we had to pivot and our priorities got shifted. Let's unpack this a little bit. There was a lot of leveling up that had to happen for you to go in this direction. And I'd love to just understand what were some of the maybe the false assumptions you had or the things that you weren't doing that were restricting you and the changes that you or kind of the growth that you had that allowed you to unlock some of this like moving into something bigger.
Well, I can tell you the biggest mistake I've made in my career in general is trying to force things to happen faster than the allotted time would allow it to happen. So, making a lot of decisions based on emotion as opposed to based on data and a strategy and tactical side of business. I made a lot of decisions based on the fear of what was going to happen instead of the result of a positive result or the outcome based thinking. And so I've really transitioned into the outcome based thinking instead of process. Now, you have to have processes, don't get me wrong, but what I mean by outcome is here's the end result that we're looking for. And that's where I'm thinking. And I pull it back to now and I say, okay, so what needs to happen from now to the next thing to get that outcome? And the question I ask is, who should be the person doing those things? So that way it doesn't always fall on me. And it's really made a massive shift in my life, in my business career, thinking that way, because it's allowed me to trust other people in doing those things and then giving them the resources that they need in order to get the outcome that I'm looking for. And that's a major thing. So number one, giving time for things to develop, like plant the seed and then water it, provide it the resources it needs and give it the time it needs to come into fruition. Biggest mistake in my career, push that too hard. Dig the seed up, see if it's growing. Where are we at? Why are we not there? What is happening? Let's make another decision. And it was like a reactive, chemical reaction that was out of control, and it ended up being chaos. And that's where a lot of people live. And so I've learned how to figure out how to focus, delegate tasks, end outcome-based thinking. So that way I'm really focused on what's the next step of my companies? How can I help them grow? How can I provide them resources? And it's really solving those problems and giving other people the ability or the resources to do that, to get the outcomes.
This makes a lot of sense. So it sounds like step one is let's get crystal clear on what the outcome is. And then let's kind of work backwards and start asking, as Dan Sullivan said in his book, who, not how. Like, who can solve this problem? Not how do I solve it? And having the patience, I think a lot of times as entrepreneurs, we want things to go faster than they're going. And the speed doesn't come from emotion, right? It comes from having the planning and getting the right people that can execute on this quickly. It can be really hard for entrepreneurs to realize that we don't have to solve every single problem, or maybe we're solving the wrong problems. Maybe the problems that we need to solve is like, who can I drop into this spot? Not let me go like master this thing and move on to this thing, right? You look at any big business, it's not run by the person who does all the jobs. It's run by the persons who found the people that have done the jobs, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's really two things. The way I look at it is resources and vision. So vision is aligning everybody to look in the same direction. How can everyone in the organization be looking and pushing and going in the same direction? That reduces chaos. It reduces restriction. If you eliminate restriction from the business, or resistance is another way to say that, you eliminate resistance, then all you have is forward progress. And so if everyone's focused in the same direction, and then secondly, resources. Well, resources, you got human resources, you got people within your organization, you've got financial resources, you've got other resources that are available, other partnerships, acquisitions, whatever resources you need in order to provide them what they need in order to get to where they go. I look at my job now. A buddy of mine, Dan Martell, I talk with him a lot about limiting what I'm actually doing and only doing the things that make the biggest impact in the company. So I have multiple companies now, and I focus, me personally, this is what I like to do. I focus on three things. I focus on the vision. Where's this company headed? Why are we headed in that direction? What is the impact we're going to make? What's the mission of this company? Where's this company going? How can I get everyone excited about that? Number two is I find the people that are aligned with and able to have the ability to get to the result that I'm looking for, that vision that I'm looking for. And then number three, how can I provide those people the resources in order to move toward that vision? Now, the vision may change as the company grows and expands and whatever, but the point is that I focus on those three things and only those three things: the vision, the people, and then the resources in order to get them what they need. And in doing that, I've pulled myself out and built a life that I totally enjoy, that I'm doing the things most of the time. I'm doing things that I love to do, that excite me and get me going. So now all of a sudden I'm waking up in the morning with energy and excitement, as opposed to 5 years ago when I was, like, oh God, another day. And what I found out was the only reason I felt that way back then was I wasn't living my true potential and my true purpose. If I'm not living my true potential and my true purpose, then guess what? I'm going to be bored. I'm going to be frustrated. There's a lot of resistance in that. And so I figured out how to do that through reading books and mentors and programs and that sort of thing. And now what I found is by doing that day in and day out, I've advanced enough that I can help other people do the same thing. And I just love doing that. I love hearing people talk about that. Oh, I didn't think I could, and now I can. And it's thanks to you. And I go, it's not me, man. It's you. I'm just giving you resources, or I'm giving you information that I've learned personally.
You've just kind of like adjusted them so they're looking in a little bit different direction so that they can go after their potential, right? And capitalize on their potential.
I look at it like this: your entire life, okay, the major parts of your life, your relationships, your money, your business or your career, your health, your personal growth, belief systems, all of, your faith, all of those things come down to two things. They come down to new beliefs and new actions. Now, what is a belief? Why did I name my book Fix Your Belief Systems, Fix Your BS? A belief is nothing more than a thought that you've repeated to yourself enough times with enough emotion that your subconscious mind runs on autopilot. That's all a belief is. So when people talk about affirmations, what they're really saying is, what they're really doing is they're changing their beliefs, because their beliefs are what drive them subconsciously. So if you believe, let's talk about your health. If you subconsciously are constantly repeating to yourself, I'm overweight, I'm unhealthy, I'm never going to get there, it's not, it's too hard, whatever, subconsciously, you will always revert back to that. That is your programming or your baseline that you're not even consciously aware of. It's subconscious. But you can change your subconscious by consciously repeating something with enough emotion until you believe it. And so you have to first understand that your thoughts are not you, and that your thoughts are your brain trying to protect you and keep you alive. That's what your thoughts are. So you can counteract that. And I can prove that in one sentence. Have you ever gone for a run, Patrick? You've ever gone for a run?
Run all the time.
Right. You run all the time. In the middle of the run, does your brain ever start telling you, dude, you're getting tired, maybe we should stop?
No, it just happens, right?
It just pops up.
It just pops up. Yeah.
Yeah. Like, hey, dude, we should probably go. We should probably quit. That's your brain just trying to help you survive. It's saying, look, if we keep going at this pace for forever, you're going to die. You're going to be in pain. You're going to break something. Something's going to get injured. But you, not your brain, not your brain's thoughts, but you, your soul, your consciousness can say, you know what, brain, shut up. I'm going to keep going. And you've done that, haven't you? Okay. So those are two different things. Your brain pops these thoughts into your head. it's not necessarily you. Your consciousness is something different. You can think about the thoughts you're thinking and go, you know what? I don't believe that. That is bull. I don't believe it. So therefore, I'm going to change that belief. And you can do that. So I believe the amount of money you're making, the amount of impact you're having on the world, the amount of your purpose and your passion that you're fulfilling has everything to do with the beliefs that you have. And if you don't believe it's possible, it's not possible, because you will come up with roadblocks and excuses that we call, they're actually reasons, but we call them excuses, or they're excuses disguised as reasons. We call them reasons. But anyway, you'll come up with stuff to justify why you can't do something because you believe it's not possible. When in reality, it is possible. There's processes you can put into place. There's other people that have probably hit those goals that if you just would open and expand your mind, you could get to those things and see them, but you're not going to see them if you believe it's not possible.
Right. So it's possible with somebody with a different belief system, and you have the ability to change your belief system. So it would be possible for you, but it requires that shift to happen first, right?
Yeah. This is what it comes down to. And this is going to blow everybody's mind. Every religious person in the history of the world, like major religious people, have agreed on one thing, and that is you become what you think about. So your thoughts, the subconscious thoughts, are what your beliefs are. So you become what you think about. If you think you're unworthy, if you think it's not possible, if you're constantly belittling yourself and thinking about yourself in a negative way, you will not reach your full potential because you don't believe. Your body will react to whatever your thoughts are. That's what your beliefs are. So your physiology will react to your thoughts and beliefs. If you don't believe me, think about a time in your life where something really sad happened. You've been to a funeral. Your physiology will start to react to that thought, but it's not happening right now.
I've had this happen myself. I've lived this myself a couple of times. There was, as a young man, getting my heart broken by a girl. It happened twice, and both times I was like really sick afterwards. Like I was throwing up, right? And it was the timing of it. That never happens, and it happened within 48 hours of this breakup that like crushed me. It impacted my physiology, my thinking. Right? It was really obvious to me looking back on how this stuff impacts, and we've seen this too, where you see it in the movies more, but it happens in real life, right? Where as a doctor, I'm sure you can confirm, somebody sees something shocking and they have that like vagal nerve response and they pass out. We know that this stuff is connected. As I was mentioning to you earlier, I was just under Chris Voss mastermind, the FBI negotiator, and Chris has studied brain science with some of the top people. He's friends with Huberman, and he's just got access to all kinds of data. And I can't remember exactly how he phrased it, but it was kind of like our conscious mind is processing information at like 4 megabytes per second, and our subconscious is doing it at 20 million, right? So if you kind of like think about the difference between those two numbers, and this is why we'll be talking to somebody and maybe they haven't said something wrong. We just all of a sudden there's like a bad vibe where it's just like, I don't trust this. Or maybe the person hasn't said something really, really, really right. And we're like, man, I really like this person. This is really good energy. This person seems pure, right? Our subconscious is the one that's making this decision. And as somebody who spent a decade as a professional poker player, there was times where I would get to the end of a hand and I knew that I was beat, but there was no reason to know that. I couldn't understand it. I mean, there was a reason, but it's like, it wasn't in the front of my mind. I was like, something's changed and I'm now losing and I don't understand what's like, and I don't know how I know, but it was almost always right when I felt that like the wave just kind of like rolls over. You're like, okay, this is something's changed here now. All of a sudden, that's so subconscious, right? Subconscious there speaking up for us.
It's so people call that your intuition. Your intuition is that feeling. When you think about your subconscious, it's been referred to as like an antenna. So, we human beings are vibrational beings, meaning you can measure the vibrational energy coming off of a human being. And your emotional state has a different frequency based on what emotion you're in. When people walk into a room and there's, let's say, two people arguing and They are not yelling anymore. They're just sitting in the room. You can walk in, and you've heard of the phrase, you can cut the tension with a knife. What that is that's your intuition, that's your subconscious picking up that vibrational frequency, like, oh, something's going on here. What is going on? And you can feel it. That's that sixth sense, if you will. Manifestation is a huge catchphrase now. People talk about manifesting all the time. Well, manifestation is nothing more than you attracting, or the law of attraction is another way to say that. It's your subconscious mind putting out a pulse of energy and connecting with things that are in the same vibrational plane. That's what that is. And if you don't believe that it's possible to reach a goal, you are now at a different vibrational plane than if you did believe it was possible. If you believed it was possible, then guess what? You would then connect with whatever's on that vibrational plane, and you would start coming up with seemingly random coincidences, which I don't believe in coincidences. I believe everything happens for a reason based on that vibrational plane that you're on. And so once I started to really understand this and started connect the dots backwards in my life, you know what? I believed this, and look at the repetition of what's happening. And I believe there are in your past, there are lessons to be learned of where you're currently at. If something continues to happen over and over, the reason why that's happening is because your beliefs are holding you in a pattern, and you have to break that pattern in order for things to change. And then when you see the things start to change, you confirm that it's changing. You go, oh my gosh, look, I recognize, I'm connecting that. Now you have new neurological patterns. Dr. Joe Dispenza talks about this all the time. He talks about, how can you build a new neurological platform in your brain? Well, it comes from your patterns in your brain, the patterns of thought. And so, one of my favorite quotes is by Henry Ford. Thinking is the hardest work there is. That's why so few people do it. And it's true. If you just pay attention to your thoughts and what you're saying about yourself and to yourself all day long, every day, you'd be surprised how many of them are negative. And I'll let you go for a second here, but I'll later on, I'll show people a really simple tool that I use in order to find out what you think about yourself.
I love that. It's such a powerful part of business that I think is, or any endeavor in life that you hope to be successful with. And in a second, I'd love to hear, where do these negative beliefs come from? And there's this study that I think is really relevant. They studied the top 25 tennis players in the world. And the top 5 were a lot more successful than the following 20. And they discovered that the top 5 not only had a lot more self-talk, self-chatter, but the talk was almost all positive. When something bad happens, they're telling themselves, like, hey, this is where I'm supposed to be. And the top 5, it wasn't a lot of, there was almost no negative talk. So it's like the presence of positive talk, in my opinion, is less important than the absence of the negative talk, right? It's like these people. And then they had this NFL lineman he's like one of the top guys in the league. And sometimes they'll mic these guys up. And these guys forget that they're mic'd up. They're in the heat of the battle, right? They're in this, like, they're in their passion. And something bad happens. This guy made like a big mistake. And he's over on the sideline. And he's still mic'd up. And he's over by himself. He's talking to himself. And he's over there. He's like, I'm living the dream. You're living the dream. You're living the dream. He just keeps saying it to himself. And they've noticed this pattern again and again with the top performers. And I love this idea and thinking about this. There's people that are more successful than you, that are less capable, but the difference is it's not the skill set. It's just the belief of what they've done. For people that have had trauma and stuff like this as a child, it can be hard for them. And I think that's where some of the limiting beliefs come from. But I'd love to hear your thoughts. Where do these beliefs come from? And maybe the understanding of like how they're created can help us be more aware of them.
Well, your beliefs come from your history and the connections you've made. I call it the this equals that. So when you're younger, in your entire life, when you're younger, it could be any time from now previous, right? But people think about when I say when you're younger, they think about when you're a child. Well, yeah, when you're a child, but literally your whole life. Something occurs and you connect an emotion to it and a thought process to it. See, your thoughts turn into your emotions, right? So you have the thought process, and then you say, okay, if this occurs, then this is the result. See, your brain and your physiology, it doesn't want to revisit things all the time. It wants to figure things out and be as efficient as possible. So when a similar instance in the future occurs, your brain goes, I already got this figured out. This is the shortcut to the end. I don't have to revisit that. In fact, have you heard of older people saying things like, yeah, the older you get, the quicker the day goes. The older you get, the quicker it goes. Right. You've heard that, right? Yep. Well, here's my theory on that. Your brain being so good at figuring out, connecting things, I go to this restaurant, I eat this thing because that's what I like, and I don't have to think about it anymore. I don't have to mull over the whole menu. That's what I get. Well, you don't have to process the information anymore. You're not figuring it out. You're not thinking about it. So the older you get, the more experiences you've had, the more connections you've made of this equals that. Therefore, time seems to go faster because you're not actually having to learn new skills, think about new things, mull things over. What does that mean? How does that work? Blah, 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 blah. And most of the time we get in our patterns and we just stick to those patterns, our comfortable patterns. We just stay in that comfortable zone. And staying in that comfortable zone means there's zero growth. And when there's zero growth, why would time not go fast? Time just would go because there's nothing new. And so what I tell people all the time, you should constantly look at, how can I learn something new? How can I get to that uncomfortable spot of, well, this is different, this is new, and because you're gonna figure things out better and know more the more you get into that uncomfortable zone. I think about it like a box, like you're in a box, and every day one of two things are going to happen. It's either going to enclose a little bit more, or you're going to push it out a little bit more. The only way to push it out is to get into that uncomfortable realm, both physically, mentally, emotionally, even chemically. Sometimes you have to push against that box in order for that thing not to collapse on you. Otherwise, the older you get, the more you're just going to be in this little bitty box of the things you're comfortable with, and therefore, your life has less new stuff and less new connections and less excitement in it because of that. That's just my theory on that. But where the thoughts come from, where those beliefs come from, are the way you define the things that have happened in your past. The way you define the things that have happened in your past. So there's a really great process. I'm going to give you this thing. It's actually in the book. It's called RIP. Okay? RIP, which sounds bad. R stands for retrospection. Retrospection means you look back into your past and you find the things that you have negative thoughts about, that you viewed or deemed negative, that you can rephrase, restructure, relook at from a different perspective and say, you know what? Maybe there's a different way of looking at that. Now, that's a hard process for a lot of people because you're right. Some people have had some physical trauma, but emotional trauma, mental trauma. I can always tell you this. Everybody has had trauma in their past. The trauma you had is not unique. It is not one of a kind. There are people that have had the same traumas. So some people get into a victim mentality because, well, this happened to me. If you believe it happened to you, you are now the victim, and you probably are still acting as a victim to this day. But there's some people out there that have had the same thing happen in the past, and they say, because of that, I am now a better person. I grew, I became better, and they believe that. So guess what? They are in a new position, a better position typically than the other person that takes the victim mentality. So that's the point, is revisit the things in your past. That's retrospection. Create a new story about those things and whether they helped you or not. Number 2 is introspection. Introspection is looking at what your thought processes are, what your beliefs are, and it's looking at what you really want in life. Introspection, look internally. Look inside. What do I really want? What lights me up? What gets me excited? Ask questions about you so you can learn more about you. That's very important. Then the third part is projection. You project into the future what you want your life to look like. Now that you've rewritten your story in the past, you've looked internally, figured out what you want, why you want it, who you want to be, what lights you up, what gets you excited, what is like a perfect day, and allow yourself to write those things down. Then you look into the future, you go, you know what? I want a 4-car house, and I want I want these type of cars, and I want this, and it's okay to want that stuff. It's okay. Your beliefs, your brain will pop up and be like, you can't have that because it's not possible. You don't know if it's possible or not. What is 10 years from now? Do you know what's going to happen? No. So why not dream and have some imagination and have some fun with it while you're here in order to create that? So there's the RIP process. It's a very simple, very easy to follow process, but man, the outcomes you can get from that are absolutely astounding. So I'm going to give you a quick example of my life. I have the same upbringing very similar to a lot of males in my age range, where their dads were very hard on them. Okay, there's a lot of guys that I know that took that to mean that they weren't valuable, that they were unworthy, that they were worth nothing. Okay, now I did that. That's the way I took that. Growing up, my dad was extremely hard. You know, you miss a blade of grass when you're cutting the grass, and you might as well not have done the whole freaking thing, right? Instead of celebrating the fact that I cut 99.99% of the grass correctly, we're going to focus on the one blade of grass. Really? Yeah, that's the way it was for everything. Well, I took that to mean I wasn't good enough. I wasn't smart enough. I didn't have value. Very insecure, lots of insecurities, because I connected insecurities with what he was doing. Okay. I take responsibility for that. When I was in my early 20s, I met my wife, and my wife was like, wait a minute. She reframed it for me without me knowing. She's like, so wait, you play baseball, you're athletic, you play music, you sing, you're going to be a doctor in about a year and a half at 23 years old, you know, and she just listed out this whole list of positive aspects. And I was like, that dude sounds awesome. She's like, yeah, that's you. Huh. Interesting. So that was the first part of retrospection for me, was that I looked back and I looked at my dad in my own mind. I thought, was he trying to be a jerk, or was he trying to be a good dad? And he was trying to be a good dad. He was doing the best he had with what he knew. And what he knew was to create someone that is strong and that is capable and that can take care of his family in his life. And guess what? He succeeded. And because of that, I'm very grateful. And it's not a negative thing now. It's an extremely positive thing. And that's what I mean by retrospection. Look at those situations and your current beliefs and figure out, do they actually connect? And if they don't, rewrite the story, rewrite the script. The past is only going to affect you in the future, or in the present, if you let it. And then if you don't change it, guess what? Your future is going to look like you are right now. So you have to do that internal work. It is not possible to change without it. You have to do that.
This is really powerful. I love the RIP system. The way you describe the beliefs being formed, it makes a lot of sense. And it's, if this, then that, right? That's what we're wired to do. But a lot of the time, it's a sample size of one, right? Like if it's an extreme event, perhaps we get up and we speak in front of the class and we stumble over our words and everybody laughs at us. So now that one time, which was really painful and embarrassing for us, when I speak in front of big groups of people, everyone's going to laugh at me. Well, it's a sample size of one with a bunch of like immature kids. It's completely different than when we move into adults and people they're like have evolved emotionally and you've grown up and like you speak all the time now. Maybe you're more confident in yourself. Like it's a sample size of one. It's not how it's going to play out every time, but we build our paradigms in life based on something so small, and it's not who we were, right? We're changing every day.
Let me ask you this. What's more important, your happiness or everyone else's judgment of you?
100% my happiness, right?
Now, you might say that. You might say that. But the average, not even the average, most individuals are more worried about what other people's thoughts are of them than their happiness. They might say, yeah, my happiness is more important, but that's not what they're living. They're not living that my happiness is more important. They're living, it's better for me to be accepted by others than to do the thing that I feel is my purpose or my joy. That's where most people live. And look around you, look at your family, even look at your own actions. I guarantee you're going to find, interesting. I live for other people. Why is it that public speaking is considered and has been shown to be the number one fear?
That's it. I think it's related to that embarrassment, the embarrassment factor, which is like other people basically voting to say that you're not good enough if you're like right, and we're scared of that. I
Yeah.
think it's
So
a
you're worried
self-worth
about
type
other
thing.
people's judgment of you than what you have to say. You're more insecure about what you have to say than secure. Therefore, you worry about other people judging you, and you care about what they think more than your belief in you. That's
Yeah,
because people
absolutely.
haven't spent the time of being introspective. When we talk about like meditation, I bring that up with a lot of people. I used to think it was very foo-foo, woo-woo, whatever. You sit there, you hum, whatever. Meditation is nothing more than sitting quietly and shutting off your mind. And the older I get and the more I learn the principles of life, the more I find them in the Bible, which I had never, the Bible to me was very hard to get into because of the way it was worded, the way it was whatever. But there are phrases and lessons, every one of them that I have found principle wise, relate right back to some story or some verse back in the Bible, which is crazy to me. But be still and know that I am God. Well, when you talk about I am, the I am is internal. That's where God lives. God lives in everything. He lives inside you. So therefore, that's the I am. That's why introspection and quieting the mind, to shut the freaking mind up, to listen to your soul, to figure out what your purpose is. That's why that's so important. So, I'm not a biblical scholar or anything like that. I'm just saying I've connected like, well, this is that. That's what they were actually talking about. So meditation to me, I every day at least 10 to 15 minutes, I sit down quietly and I just meditate on something to get my brain to shut up and so I can focus, and you'll start to come up with inspirational things that go, "Oh, this is the answer to that." And you get excited about it. That's downloading it from the ether. That's downloading it from the power, the something that's greater than you. It's going, oh, hey, I figured it out. Well, yeah, you figured it out because you shut your mind off, because your mind's blocking you because of your beliefs that you have in your life.
Right.
Anyway, I don't want to get
Yeah.
too out there as far as for people, but these are the things I talk about are just principles of life that make sense, that if you implement them strategically over time. I'm not the first one to come up with all this stuff, by the way. This is all stuff that I'd gotten from plenty of other um, thought leaders in our time, from hundreds and hundreds of years of these people who have put their stuff out there, and I've listened to them. And I'm like, wait a minute, they all have the same principles. They're just packaged in different stories.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I'm a big believer in the meditation too, and I know from listening to Tim Ferriss, like he tries to identify success what in all walks of life, and they did a study of, I think it was less than 5% of people meditate, but the successful people that he interviews, it was like 90% of them meditated. I mean, that's and he's had hundreds and hundreds of episodes. That's statistically relevant, right? For us to be able to shut down our mind and be able to focus on what matters, be able to like recenter ourselves is huge. And there's a book, The Five Regrets of the Dying, where they interviewed all these people that are on their deathbeds. And one of the top regrets is kind of what we were just talking about, is like caring too much about what other people thought. I kind of had this realization. I was doing a personal development course. It's been 12 years now and it's stuck with me. I had that going into it. And that was a big shift, is kind of realizing and letting it go. And, I think it's hard to be, I think it's a practice where it's hard to be perfect and we're just kind of like always going in the right direction. But no matter what you do, people are not going to like you, and some people are going to like you. And what people are drawn to more than anything, I think, is people that are authentic, and it's just like, wow, this person is just like who they are. They're just like they're confident and they believe it and they love themselves. And just
Did you know you just hit on something very important there? I hate to interrupt you. I'm sorry, but you hit on something very important. Remember, I was talking about the vibrational of people, the vibration of energy from people when they have certain emotions like fear and anger are lower, love, joy, happiness are higher. Authenticity is the highest vibrational state you can be in. authenticity. So people talk about enlightenment. Well, enlightenment is knowing who you are and acting accordingly. That's what you are enlightened if you have looked internally enough to know who you are, not care what anybody else thinks, and you act on the purpose that you know is why you're here. That's what authenticity really is. And so being authentic draws people in because there is no resistance in that. It is a vibrational match of what other people want to be. Ooh, what is this? I like this. This feels good. This is awesome. That's why you should do that. So another word for when you talk about meditation, another word for that is focus. You mentioned that just a second ago. Just focus on a thing. Focus. Shut everything else out and just go, and focus on it until you come up with a solution or you come up with something that you feel is like, oh, that makes sense to me. That making sense is alignment. That is removing resistance. So it's a habit. Like people, it feels awkward and uncomfortable when you start. You're like, oh, is this doing any good? Am I wasting time? I get that. But just like anything else, it takes a little practice and you'll start to realize. And if you keep looking back and looking internally and then looking forward and you keep doing that, you're going to start connecting dots of like, interesting, this happened. And I can't believe out of nowhere, I got this inspiration and I made this action based on that inspiration. And then this thing happened that I could not have predicted. How did that happen? It happened because you changed who you were, which is your beliefs and your vibrational state. That's literally what happens.
Yeah, it's so powerful, and until you felt it, it's hard to explain it. But success leaves clues. Enough, you've probably heard it enough times at this point. It's worth the shot. We can meditate for free. You can go on YouTube, do a guided meditation, breathing exercises, stuff like this. There's been so many times, working with our software with LeadSnap, where I'm stuck on a problem and I go for a run or I'm doing something else, and then the problem gets solved when I'm kind of like taking my mind somewhere else and kind of released a lot of the baggage that was there when I was trying to do it. I've cleared my mind. Sometimes that happens in the middle of a run and there's more proof to the subconscious. Like my subconscious brain is still working. And then it's like, I've released enough of the weight to let it go. And there's a breakthrough. There's no cost for this. So if you're on the fence about it, why not just give it a try? Dr. G, this has been amazing. This has been a really powerful session. I want to finish this up because both of us have spent time in coaching. And I know from our previous conversation, we kind of like came to this agreement about what people really want. And Dan Martell spent a lot of time in his coaching as well. Dan Martell talks about the chocolate and the broccoli. And the broccoli is what we need and the chocolate is what we want. And that's kind of how people focus on these things. From an agency perspective, what I've learned, the chocolate that they want are like tactics on SEO. Like they want this, like, hey, how do I do this like Google business profile strategy? But what I've seen I've seen a lot of people who are like amazing with SEO that have small businesses. And I have seen people that have big businesses where their SEO and tactical knowledge doesn't seem to be as strong, but their mental game, what they're focused on, the fact that they're plugging people in, as we talked about earlier, that they're answering more like who, not how questions. And they're just kind of like more of a puppet master that's orchestrating this thing. I'd love to hear, do you agree with this? Do you find that most of the people, it sounds, you wrote a book about it, so I think this is true. It's their beliefs that are limiting, not their tactical knowledge. Do you agree with that?
Well, yeah, it's what they focus on too. So when people come to me for my consulting, coaching groups, that sort of thing, they're searching for a solution. So you literally saw an ad. You mentioned Google Business Profile. I do an ad on a Google biggest business profile. So people will come to me because they think that that's going to solve a problem for themselves. And we found that matches with who we really want to attract in certain areas. So those people come to us and we go, yeah, I mean, this is a potential solution, but they're trying to solve a problem for an end result, an outcome. And they think the Google Business Profile is going to get them there. And what I found is it's generally not connected. They're trying to get this outcome. What do I want? I want more leads. I want more traffic. And I think this Google Business Profile thing, this tactic, is going to get me to the result that I'm after. But what I always tell them is to back up for a second. Let's create a strategy. The strategy then goes down to the tactics, and the tactics need to match your strategy, which then matches your outcome that you're after. Most people, when they come to me for business consulting, they are looking for better marketing, SEO, Google business page, just marketing tactics and strategies in general. I want more marketing. Why? Because I want more leads and I want more clients. The problem is that typically I ask them, if we increased your lead traffic by tenfold, would your current systems, after you get those leads, your sales systems, your operations, your HR systems, your financial systems, will those systems support a 10x or 100x of those leads? And almost every time they go, no. They go in with this idea that they do believe this one thing is the secret. It's the tactic that's going to solve the problem of I need more leads. But that's not the full picture. That's like taking a puzzle and zooming into like one piece. Your business is a big old puzzle. It's got a lot of pieces to it. The bigger the business is, the more pieces there are. The more you have that vision, which is kind of the box sitting over to the side where you're looking at the entire picture, then you can start looking at the puzzle pieces and going, okay, what is the next best thing that needs to happen in order for me to move towards this picture over here? And just so you know, that right there is the first time I've ever used that analogy, and I really like it, so I'm going to use it from here on out. But that's the idea. So you got to pull back and say, okay, what's the vision of the company? What's the strategy to get this outcome? And what things tactically do we need to put in place to make that happen? And do I have the systems and everything that needs to be put in place to support what I'm trying to do? And the response for most people on those things are no. They're grabbing at straws. They're throwing spaghetti at the wall and seeing what sticks. And I know, because I was there for 15 plus years where I didn't understand that concept, and I would just do marketing without a strategy, and I would do strategy without a vision. And if I didn't actually have a vision of what we're trying to accomplish, how could I attract people that match a vision that I haven't come up with as the owner of the company? So it's bigger than just, hey, is this thing going to solve my problem? Because most of the time your belief is very incorrect in this is going to solve my problem. And that's not generally true when we talk about businesses.
Yeah, we're going to go after the things that we're good at, and that's going to create weaknesses in our business, and we're going to stay focused on that, and we're going to avoid the things that really is what we need. Dr. G, this was an awesome session, man. Where can people reach out to you if they want to find more information? Obviously, Dr. G is a master with the mental side of things, so I highly recommend checking out his book. But if somebody wants to stay in touch or find out more from you, where can they find you?
Yeah, I put Instagram is the best way. I mean, we put information out on Instagram all the time, both personal and business growth, as well as mindset growth, those type of things. And then you can also go to my website, which is drgregpursley at drgregpursley.com. But Instagram's the easiest. It's got free content, and that we have all the links to everything there, YouTube, and all the other things that we do. But Instagram at Dr. Greg Pursley is the way to go. You can also go to Fix Your BS at Fix Your BS on Instagram as well. Same thing. Put a lot of the same content out there. The idea that what I'm really wanting to do is I'm creating an army here of people, a group of people that really want to achieve what they can achieve, like see what they're actually able to achieve in their life. Let's reach our maximum potential. And we all fall into pit holes. We all fall into getting off track. And that's why having a group, an army around you of other individual people that are like-minded really helps. Even me as the leader of this movement, I've run off track. Last year, I didn't get into my fitness routine like I should have. And I'm, as of the week before Christmas, whatever that week that was, I was back on, because I believe that if you wait until New Year and say, well, I'll start New Year, you're not going to actually do it. So I started the week before Christmas. But the point is that we do get off track. Humans do get off focus. When you get to the next level, it's a new level of new problems that you don't know, and you get confused and off track. And that's why having a mentor and having a group of people around you that are at that level is so critical, in order for you to figure out what those visions and strategies and tactics are. But I can tell you this, it all starts with the introspection. It all starts with you looking internally, figuring out who you are, what you love, why you love it, what do you want your life to look like. And the more aligned you are with those things, you figure those things out, the more aligned you are, the happier you are going to be in your life. And then number two is eliminate your fear of what other people think about you. They are not you. Get rid of that fear. Who cares if they laugh or whatever? Most of the time, they're envious. Most of the time, they are insecure. Most of the time, they're scared and they're lashing out at you. So don't take it personally. It's going to add resistance to you figuring out who you are and what your vision for your life is. If you want to create that vision for your life, people like me and people that we've mentioned, Patric and Dan Martell, and all these guys that are out there, find somebody that matches where you want to be and go and learn from them and be part of their group and move in that direction and have the cojones to do it, because you don't want to be 85 looking back at your life and going, I wish I would have.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I mean, you see all the best performers in the world have coaches, and there's a reason for that. It's not some miraculous coincidence, right? So, Dr. G, this was awesome, man. This was great, fantastic. I'm so grateful for having you today. Any final words before we close it out?
I just want everybody here to realize something I wish I would have realized when I was younger, and it was that you matter, you're worth it, and you do not want to look back at your life and say, I wish I would have. The time is now. The only time you ever have is now. So taking action is very important. Figuring out what you believe the next action is, taking action, and not being afraid of the result of that action. Oh, it was uncomfortable. Yeah, it's new. Anything that's new is going to feel uncomfortable and different. So figure out who you are, what you want to do, how you want your life to look, what you want, your life to be like, and let's start moving toward that. And that way you can build the life that you love on your terms.
I love it. I love that message. It's one that I firmly believe in. And I hope anyone out here listening follows this. No matter where we are, there's always a way for us to move forward. We can always keep improving. As Tiger Woods said, Tiger Woods, he never said, "Hey, I want to be perfect." There's always room to improve, right? And that's that attitude of always getting better. So, Dr. G, thank you so much. Appreciate this, and I love your message. So, fantastic episode.
Well, thanks, Patrick. Thanks for having me. And everybody, I look forward to talking with you on Instagram or in any other way that I can help add value to your life.
Excellent. All right, guys. We'll see you on the next episode of the $1 Million Agency Podcast. Thanks a lot.